Hello, everyone. Namaste and welcome. I am Rashmi Chanduraj, co-founder of SIRA. If you're joining with us for the first time, SIRA is a women-led platform designed for women to grow, reflect, and connect around topics like money, mindset, wellness, as well as leadership. It's a space to have real conversations, get into sort of deep conversations, right? As well as, really having no filters. Tonight's conversation is actually very, very close to my heart, entrepreneurship. We're diving into real journeys of women entrepreneurs, behind the scene tribulations and struggles, the purpose, the pivots, and the sustenance that these women have. We are actually joined with us today by three incredible women who've built purpose-driven businesses ground up. Their stories and visions and voice is so, so powerful. I am deeply honored that they're here joining us, and I am actually thrilled to actually get into the introduction. I'm going to start with Leena. Leena Munot, she is the co-founder of The Giving Tree. Leena creates more than just, I feel like, corporate gifts. She creates soulful, sustainable experiences that are rooted in Indian stories, from Worli to Madhubani art, to handcrafted souvenirs. Her work, revives, I want to say, forgotten traditions while making gifting personal, intentional, and full of meaning. Next, I have Mansi Joshee. She is the force behind KhojCraft and has begun, I think this project kind of began, during the lockdown as an, I want to say experiment, but it's now become a thriving brand. Now she's gone from online to having physical stores in two different locations in Bangalore as well as Gurgaon. Mansi's journey is, I think, just bold in terms of, being able to reinvent. She's come from, corporate media to building a career now in retail and celebrates sort of Indian design and identity. I'd love to sort of hear how she's navigated motherhood and entrepreneurship, with a heart. Next is Yeshoda Karuturi. She is, oh my God, she amazing co-founder of Hoovu Fresh. She's transforming how India experiences puja flowers. Who would have ever thought that you can take that to another level? She's used technology, she's used tradition and the whole supply chain innovation to really deliver fresh blooms to home across the country with Hoovu on platforms like Big Basket as well as Blinkit. Yeshoda is showing us, what it looks like to honor heritage, while really building, for the future. You might have seen it, perhaps on Shark Tank. So if you have not, go look it up. But that said, these three women, powerful journeys. I can't wait for Deepa, my dear friend and co-founder, to take it away and moderate this session. Deepa, take it away. The floor is all yours.
Thank you, Rashmi, and thank you, Leena, Mansi, Yeshoda, for being here.
Thank you.
And we're very eager to learn your stories. To start off, I want to say that entrepreneurs have a journey that has got some sort of a deeper purpose or a meaning, right? Leena, I wanted to ask you, what motivates you to show up every day, year after year, and to run the Giving Tree? What is your why?
Okay, so my why is pretty simple. It's rooted in my childhood. So I grew up in a pretty humble home, and my dad and mom had just started out their careers when we were really young. And so dad would work almost 18 hours a day. I wouldn't see him until it was the weekend, and that also maybe just for an hour or two. So it was mom who was literally the center of everything at home, right? And I have two other siblings. And I think I was about 7 or 8 years of age. And back then, those many years ago, there was no concept of really doing a public celebration of a birthday. So it was the year in school, and I saw one fine day, one of my classmates was dressed in a colored dress, not in her uniform, and she gave her the big smile and a big box of chocolates. And everybody stood up and sang. So that's my first memory of really what a birthday looks like. And I was like pretty excited looking at what was going on. Everybody around was like excited, taking chocolates from her. Everybody was wishing her. She was so happy. And she came back the next day and said she got so many presents at home. And for me, it was like my first ever understanding of the concept of what a birthday is all about, right? Because in my house, there was no concept of celebrating a birthday. And so 2 months later, it was my birthday that was coming up. And I was damn excited. I was like, wow, like this happened to that friend. So obviously something is going to happen, which is going to be really special on my birthday. And I couldn't wait. I couldn't sleep all night. My birthday came. My dad didn't wish me because it was just like any other day at home. My siblings got up, went to school. It was a normal day. I went with my school clothes. And I couldn't figure out what was going on. And I didn't know how to ask this to my mom, right? So I came back home and I was quite upset. And then around evening, my mom fixed me my favorite meal. And she came by, she made pani puri size of fulkas because she knew I loved them. And she made my favorite sabzi, which was sweet. And I got an extra dollop of ghee on my food that day. And somehow that story just stayed with me. You know, in a whole day where nothing really nice happened in the name of being a birthday, my mom made that effort and that made me feel so special. So I think that's really my why I wake up each morning and go to Giving Tree. Because somewhere, somehow, I fundamentally believe that everybody deserves to feel special. And my way of making people feel special is through sending them gifts that bring them delight, happiness, and make them feel nice. So that's my why.
My God, you actually have like a proper story for it.
Yeah,
That's
there is.
amazing.
There is a story. Yeah.
Nice to hear that. Mansi, you from a corporate media, you started something on your own and during COVID, and what a plunge, right? What gave you the courage to start something on your own? What is your why?
Oh, thanks. I think after Leena's very powerful story, I sort of feel uh, I wish I had something so powerful to share. But I think the commonality in our stories, and I think why Rashmi and you have started SIRA, etc., is all because we feel very strongly and very passionately about something. I feel very strongly about Indian design. I feel very strongly about Indian craft forms. And I feel very strongly, uh, till a few years back, this used to be this tag called ethnic furniture, ethnic interiors. You know, it's got a very ethnic look. And I just found that word so archaic. I'm like, but that's not Indian craft. It needs to become a real part of your life. And you can have a contemporary interior, but just have some standout pieces of Indian craft, you know. And some of the pieces like Gond, like Naga crafts, they're so contemporary, so modern in their way. And we just have to present them in a way, and we have to relook at them and reimagine them for today's living. And I think uh, that's really where it started. Yes, I think it was a brave and courageous decision now, I feel in retrospect, because we started with very large pieces. We didn't know how to ship them. This was happening in COVID. There was no way to sort of navigate the whole thing. We lost a lot of money in breakage. We lost a lot of money in pilferage. Uh, but like entrepreneurs, you sort of keep walking, and keep learning. And I think uh, uh, the word we work with is Khoj. Khoj means discovery of crafts. Khoj means an exploration. And I think this has been a fulfilling journey, not just for our consumers who've found the discovery and the entryway to a lot of crafts. It's been a discovery of design for us. And I think the journey continues. Yes.
Lovely, Mansi. That's kind of very passionate answer. Yeshoda, in a very unorganized, traditional, fragmented industry, you started something that is so unique. And what drives you to building Hoovu Fresh?
I think exactly what you said, right? Like it's so unorganized. But the actual use case is so different. Like when you think about puja and you think about devotion, for anyone that prays, it's those moments of silence, meditation, and in a way that your me time, right? And that time is so special and it's so important. But then when you think about an unorganized market, it's like a lot of haggling. It feels like either you're winning or the market vendor is winning, or there's, you're getting these flowers and you usually pay the highest price for the lowest quality flowers because it goes through so many levels of the supply chain, all of that. Everything just kind of felt broken, right? And it just didn't feel right that the most special moment of your day had to have this background of chaos. And then you're like, okay, now I can pray because I've dealt with the chaos. We're like, how do we bring delight to the experience of getting puja flowers along with the actual experience of doing puja was the idea behind it. And then everything we do in Hoovu then came from that idea of anyone that prays, it's you want to, you're not doing it as like a checklist. You want to spend time with your divine form. You want to take that time to just let go of all the worries of the world and just spend time with God. How do we make those 5 minutes of your everyday beautiful? So whether obviously solving it with the flowers was the most important, but with everything else, right? Talking about the significance of festivals or our agarbattis or anything like that, it was going back to making those 5 minutes a little special, or if not special, like taking away the stress of the pre 5 minutes. So you're able to have your special 5 minutes. So that's kind of.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, when all of you with this, entrepreneurship journey, it's never a straight one, right? There are a lot of twists, and every now and then there's surprises springing onto you, and you have to, it tests your patience, and it tests throws a lot of challenges. You need to have that resilience to sort of ride through the journey. Leena, along the way, looking back, what is some of the biggest lessons you've learned? And if you could share something with us.
Sure, Deepa. So it's almost 25 to 28 years since we're doing this business now. And we've seen many ups and downs in the industry itself. Again, highly unorganized industry of corporate gifting. No barrier to entry. Even the stationery shop at the corner of the road will say he's a corporate gifting guy, right? And plus, from a pin to an aircraft, everything is a corporate gift. If a corporate company says they want it, it's a gift. So you really can never be a one-stop shop for everyone to come and shop with you. And so I think two key lessons I learned along the way are, one is you better fall in love with change. Because if you don't, then complacency has not got any place in any business. I mean, I don't think it's got any place in anyone's life per se, but mostly in business. And so we did two things. One was to pivot our business from a B2C to a full stack B2B. We started out our business as just handmade paper products. So we love to do everything with paper. And even now that continues to be my forte. But we pivoted because we realized our numbers were not adding up. There was a year, there was that phase in between in Bangalore where everybody was hosting coffee mornings. Big retail stores or boutique retail stores were doing it. And we also started something on the same lines, but we called it chai mornings. Because I'm a very big fan of chai, and so we started having chai mornings, and we had a good footfall of people coming in. Facebook had just started, so we had kind of learned how to use technology and social media and the power of that to attract people, put up posts, put up pictures and all of that. So the going was really good for the first 2 years. when we started making a lot of stock, inventory, and then slowly we started to see two things happen. One was the same people were coming back to us. And obviously, the same people will not want to come back and buy the same things. Like, how much of a change, how much of a difference can you really create in the name of a product, right? And the second thing is, lot of large scale retail had really popped up at that point. So for 250 rupees, you could get at least 20 to 30 options in a home stop or in a home center kind of a large scale retail store, as opposed to maybe 2 or 3 products at a Giving Tree kind of a store. And I think a year and a half later, we were sitting on huge unsold inventory and the realization that the numbers were doing all the talking. We had to give up retail. And we did that with a very heavy heart. But we did it, and we've never looked back. So that was one pivot. And I think that happened only because we had to make ourselves open to change. It is difficult, but it is the right thing to do for your business. So that was one learning. And the second learning was, I think that came in somewhere in between us, where we pivoted into selling all kinds of products in the name of corporate gifting, not just what we were manufacturing. And so almost for 10, 15 years now, we've been selling all trading products like laptops, bags, t-shirts, everything else that we don't manufacture. Basically, we trade, we buy and sell, because we realized it's easier to make an existing customer happy than to look for a new customer every day. So if I have a happy customer, he's not going to buy a handmade paper notebook every year. He will want to buy a laptop bag. He may want to buy a zipper. He may want to buy a power bank. And I need to have those things available for him, right? And thanks to that, I think we've been able to see ourselves through all the recessions, downtimes, and something as big as COVID. COVID, in fact, hit us hard because, as we all know, gifting is a discretionary spend. So that's the first thing that gets knocked out of everybody's expense sheet. And that is our bread and butter, fortunately or unfortunately. So Mala and me, my partner, and me sat down with a paper and pen one day in my house. And we said, okay, what else can we bring to the table that can get us the money to pay our salaries? And we created something called as the Giving Tree Kitchen just in COVID. And what we did through that was we created Iyer style sambar powder, rasam powder, immunity booster. We were the first ones in the market to call it that, immunity booster, where we came up with a concoction that I sat and learned and made at home. And it is still such a wonder that it is like it's helping all of us keep ourselves and our immunity really high. So we started the Giving Tree Kitchen out of nowhere in that time of COVID. So again, if we were not open to change, I don't think we would have been able to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So from what I gather, you're trying to say that the only constant is the change.
Absolutely, yeah. And you've got
And
to
so the business
enter
yeah.
the space of change with wonderment in your intention. If you're going in with fear, then change can get really hard, I feel. Just my personal take. If you go in with wonderment, saying that I know this change is only going to do good to me, then you are far more open to, accepting resources, looking for options and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Mansi, when we had a conversation sometime back, you were talking about how women carry this invisible load and that prevents them from scaling, right? So you want to talk about that as to what challenges you too faced, as a woman?
Yes, and thanks, Deepa. I think this, it was a very provocative question that Rashmi and you had raised to me, saying, Mansi, why are women not scaling up their businesses? Why is there a big boys club? Why are women not being able to get those kind of massive deals that men are getting, etc., etc.? And I remember my response to that was because we are not big enough to sit at the table where these conversations are happening. And I don't think that's because we are women. It's because our businesses are not large enough. It's because our businesses are not scaled enough. Now, the question is, why are women not being able to build businesses that are large enough and scaled enough? There are some women who have done it, Kiran Mazumdar Shaw, Anu Aga, etc. They've all built larger businesses. However, for most, and I say for most middle class, professional, working women who are trying to build businesses, it often comes with the added uh, not complication, not burden, but there is an added element of family, managing managing expectations, having children, uh, invisible burdens that you are carrying. So while I'm sitting here in this conversation, or while I'm sitting in my store, or while I'm having a discussion with a supplier or a potential client or an interior designer, my mind is compartmentalized in 3 or 4 places. The maid is going to come. I need to tell her what dinner needs to be made. My son's tuition is there. Has it been scheduled? How is he going to come back from the house? My daughter was feeling unwell in the hostel today. I hope she's taken her antibiotic. My mother, multiple things are happening in your brain. Unlike men who are probably operating at 80 to 85% of their concentration, of their capability, of their full power of being present in that moment and being mindful in that moment, we women are often compartmentalizing things and therefore operating possibly at 35 to 40% of our capacity. And I think that's not just true for women entrepreneurs, that's true for many, many working women, that's true for even housewives. We, as women, are from Venus. Yes, I would agree to that, because we are constantly compartmentalizing and we're constantly multitasking in our brains. And while it's supposed to be a women's superpower, it definitely distracts you from the attention and the mindfulness that you should be giving to the present moment. So I think it is possible for women to scale their businesses, but it's increasingly becoming difficult because we are multitasking at so many things, unlike men who definitely have a much easier game to play. A much more easier level playing field, let's put it like that. I would say that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, Mansi. I mean, I totally agree with what you're saying, and I kind of resonate. On that same note, Yeshoda, you don't have that many responsibilities. I mean, you're not married, you still don't have children and stuff. What are your challenges for scaling your business in such an unorganized sector, right? And you're giving it pretty much your 80-90% of your attention to the business.
Yeah, definitely. I, can't speak from the same place. So it is obviously different being a younger founder who doesn't have that many responsibilities. It's easier for me. My mom takes care of the home and so on, where I can just focus on work. And that is a huge privilege that I definitely need to be aware of. When I think about scaling in our space, of course, like every business has its own kind of challenges for scaling. I think something that's interesting is that we are obviously the first to market, right? A brand in the puja flower space has never really been made before. So that first mover has an advantage, of course, but it also comes with its own scaling issues. I mean, I don't even want to call it an issue, but scaling challenges that, of course, we will overcome and have overcome to a large extent. Like even when it came to hiring or any of the processes that we set up, we had to kind of do that from scratch. So when we started, we were like, okay, puja flowers don't last that long. They need to stay fresh in the customer's home. So what do we have to do? The simplest solution was reduce the supply chain. So we're like, how do we take a 48-hour to 72-hour supply chain and make it less than 12 hours? So then it was all about optimizing the supply chain, buying from farmers, making sure that we're delivering to customers within the same day and so on. And then one day my co-founder Ria was like, but why is it that these flowers only last a couple of hours? Why can't we extend it? And it takes a lot to be able to ask that question and to look at status quo and say, okay, all this is fine. We can optimize status quo, but why are we stuck in this little circle? Can we kind of step away from it, right? And when she did that, we started doing a lot of research. She started doing a lot of research into different flowers and what is kind of required for flower life extension. But there weren't that many research papers available, maybe just on jasmine or something like that, which is a high value product that goes for exports. But the largest issue, kind of not go into more details, but the largest issue we saw when it came to scaling was that this, or with anything that we were setting up in this industry, was that it was an industry that was ignored. Like even when we say we're a puja flower business, the first thought for everyone's like, oh, really? That's a thing? Like that can exist? Not because people think it's not a need, right? As soon as you say that, the next sentence usually is like, oh, yes, I get flowers from here, or I struggle with my flowers, or my mother does puja, or my father does puja. But it's become such a common thing in our lives that it's become a background. We see it in every cab, we see it in every sweet shop, in our own homes. But it's just in that background where I'm not paying attention to it as a product. And suddenly, when we talk about it, more than anything, people are just paying attention to it, right? And even with our customers, that was the biggest conversation we had with them. Whenever we spoke to someone, either people would be like, oh, this could be a business, or I could see like a sparkle in their eyes. And I was like, this is someone that does puja. And it would be somebody that would be like, let me tell you my problems. And this is what I'm struggling with. How do I order? And so on. And the largest thing that felt like they wanted to say that is you just wanted to feel heard, right? Suddenly it was like, oh, this is something that is so important to me. It's my prayer, right? And that's why so many of us are in satsangs and so on, because you want that safe space to share. And then I'm facing a problem there that nobody's really looking at or nobody's trying to solve. And that's why we saw a lot of excitement. So while it was a challenge, it was also a huge advantage, because when we set up, of course, we made so many mistakes. I'm sure we disappointed a lot of customers, but customers were very patient with us. Because when I said, hey, I don't know, I want to solve this problem, I'm a first-time founder, how do I do this? For people, they were like, we want you to solve this problem as well. So let me give you exact feedback of what you could do. And that way, we were able to grow with our customers, which ended up being a great advantage of being a first mover, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting. Leena, if you were to go back to your younger self and advise, when you're starting out, what would you do? What would you give yourself an advice?
I think first thing is I would, so again, when we started out corporate gifting business back then, it was not a thing. Corporate gifting just meant giving pressure cookers and stainless steel casseroles to employees, right? All high utility products, because that was also where the Indian market was. People were still, it's only the big manufacturing giants who were giving out gifts. So if I have to go back and tell myself something, I think first thing is I would do is create a brand with a story that's very powerful from day one, because I think that will kind of keep you aligned when you get into all those challenging phases of your business ahead. This why will keep you very centered and grounded. And the second is to definitely get a mentor. I think a mentor, we couldn't afford a mentor very early on in our business, of course, but we had so many friends and family were always there to help. And we joined so many organizations like BNI to kind of network and learn and grow. But I think, yeah, these would be the things. Get your why sorted, because it'll help you in the long run. It'll help you also get your business the right kind of mentor, because a mentor has to resonate with your why. Otherwise, he could take you down another path completely. And, after some point, you lose your drive and you wonder why you could be doing really good business, but you lose the joy in that business. So very important to get a mentor who aligns with your why. And I think third thing is to definitely get into your respective industry-based community, because there's just so much that you will learn, like immense amount of learning. So I think those would be my
Right.
3 things that I would either do differently or tell myself or tell my younger self to do.
Yeah. The same question to you, Mansi, if you were to go back and advise yourself.
Yeah. I think just very quickly, I'm going to just talk about two things which I personally feel as an entrepreneur. I think your first year and a half is a great sense of joy. The hustle is good. You're enjoying the process. You feel like you're solving a problem. You feel like you're resonating with the customers, etc., etc. And then I think by the time you hit the second year or the third year, this hustle starts becoming more real. The challenges start becoming bigger. Scaling up starts becoming an issue. You realize then the passion sort of needs to be dialed down and the reality checks start coming in. So I think at that point, what I call the messy middle, that's a really tough part of any entrepreneur's journey, and every entrepreneur will face it, right? It's not a big one faces it or a small, it doesn't matter what the size is. Typically, the intermediate years are very, very tough, right? So I think if I was to go back, I would say focus on the joy, not focus, but keep the joy in some part of your thing, because you have to hold on to something, right? There are times where you're so demotivated, where you feel that nothing is working. It's just such a struggle every day. The why of why you're coming into work every day. You're like, should I just shut this whole thing? How am I going to pivot? How is it going to grow? So many existential questions you're asking. I think it's important to sort of figure out the joy in it and keep it somewhere in your heart. I'm lucky I work in something which is really, really important to me, which I feel is a compelling part of me. And that's why it keeps me sort of going into work even when I feel demotivated. I think the other thing which I would say is keep planting new seeds. Entrepreneurship is about a field that is out there, and you have to keep planting new seeds. There is no one way of doing things. There is no one customer segment. There is no one product way that you need to do. You will have to keep changing, and pivoting is many of the things, especially as the business grows, don't gestate immediately. You don't see the results of it within 10 days or 15 days. You have to plant the seed and you have to wait for 6 months, 8 months. I'm going to talk about my store. I recently opened a store in Bangalore. Everybody told me it's going to take 6 months for the store to become profitable. You know it academically, you know it, hearing all about it. Everybody's told you, you said, I'm very clear-eyed about it. The fact of the matter is, if for 5 days there is no sale, your heart is sinking at every single day, right? And that's a real feeling. You know it academically, yes, but it's a seed you've planted and you have to give it that 6 months for it to. And then one day somebody will walk in and shop for half the store and you'll be like, okay, done, dusted, getting somewhere. So keep the joy, keep planting seeds, not just pivoting, but planting the seeds. They'll take some time, but 10 seeds that you'll plant, 2 will show some green sprouts, and hopefully 1 will grow into a fruit-bearing kind of a thing. And third thing is, I think, as a woman, I would say manage your time far more efficiently, right? Pull in whoever needs to be pulled in, build strong support structures, use the community of women, use your family, use your tribe. You're building something. Everybody needs to, it takes a village, whether you're building a business or you're growing up with a child, to put it all together. So don't be afraid to ask for help. Reach out, check in with people, check out with networks, check out with strangers, see how you can. Don't be embarrassed. Don't let that ego stop you. I think those are the 3 things I would say. Keep the joy, keep planting new seeds, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Yeah, that's a good takeaway, Mansi. Yeshoda, for someone who's starting a business and is hesitant to take a step, do you have some advice to give from your own journey?
Well, initially one thing, but listening to Leena, I've added on the mentorship aspect. That's super, super important. And I think it helped Ria and me a lot, especially as first-time founders. We reached out to a lot of people. We spoke to a lot of people. And I mean, I'm so grateful for all the mentors through the journey. And there'll always be certain mentors that are great for you in the beginning, others that may be the right people for you later. That's okay as well. A good mentor will understand the purpose on the role that they play, and it's important for us to be aware of that too. But yeah, one thing a mentor said to me very, very early on, which helped me kind of restructure things, because I was always someone that was scared, and I was like, okay, if we start this and it fails, and it's not just our money, we've taken investors' money, there's a lot more responsibility with that, and so on. And I remember when I was talking about Hoovu, I said something business. And something that a mentor said to me is, he's like, a startup is not a business. A startup is an experiment to build a lasting business. So treat everything that you do as an experiment. And then you learn through it. And I think that it's a very simple reframing. Nothing on ground really changes, but it really helps you like rethink the way you look at what's happening, right? Because when I started and everything would happen, it was like, oh my God, is this going to lead to a successful business? Does this mean we fail tomorrow? Does this mean we shut shop? And most things actually will do neither. They're not going to make us jump across hoops and become so big or like fail the next day. But every decision kind of feels like you're making a decision between the highest of the highs and lowest of the lows, which more than anything is just really emotionally and mentally draining. And the life of an entrepreneur is a marathon. You can't get tired that quickly. But that reframing and looking at it as an experiment then was like, okay, no, this is not a business today. I want to get to a business. So how do I get there? Really helped. And even between Ria and me, whenever we're like thinking about different things to do, and if we don't agree on the idea or it's something new, we always frame it as an experiment. We're like, okay, let's set this budget, let's set this time, this is the person that's going to own this project, and let's run it as an experiment. It succeeds, great. We have a new vertical that we're starting off. If it doesn't, great. What are the learnings from that we can apply in our day-to-day, right? So that really helped. And I feel like that's something that all of us need to remind ourselves of, that there's no one fixed answer. We are constantly experimenting and figuring things out. So just getting back to that like student mindset, I guess.
Yeah. So in a way, I see a lot of similarity in all three, where you're talking about resilience of some sort, having a deeper sense of why, and the joy that keeps you, and keeping yourself flexible so that any challenge that's thrown your way, you're like sort of, you dodge that or you tackle that and come out, of it. Mansi, I remember you mentioning something about your website being hacked at one point.
Yes.
And do you want to just tell us how you dealt with it as a solution?
Yeah. So very quickly, thanks, Deepa, for raising it. Again, it's just one of those ups and lows which you go through, which in retrospect is a great story to tell, but in that moment is like highly fraught, and you're working with it. So we have a fairly extensive website with around 1,000 SKUs. And one day, the guy who handles my invoicing, my team member handles my invoicing, he said, we've got these 2 orders, but we don't know where we're coming from. I'm trying to track them. They're small value orders. Our normal average basket size is around 10,000. They were for 1,500 or 2,000. He's like, I'm trying to, and they're showing some strange product, etc. So he kept tracking. Later that night around 10:30, he called me. And he told me that somebody had taken a full website of 1,000 products and created a full duplicate of it, a mirror image. Okay. And all the products were marked down by minimum 90%. And they were taking orders against it. And when we started looking at it, they had it real time done. It was completely real time. Every product that we were uploading that day was getting reflected in the website. They were collecting monies. Our names were mentioned on that website. So it seemed as though it was a completely genuine website. At that point of time, we didn't know what to do. Like, should we close down our website? What is the starting point for that at 10:30 at night? And of course, we went into a huddle. I think by morning, 9 a.m., we had a game plan ready and we attacked it on a number of fronts. Number one, we went to the cybersecurity to file a complaint. Number two, we activated a legal team to do an injunction on that particular website. Number three, we activated our developers to see if we could put in stronger, stringent security measures. Number four, we wrote on our website saying this is a problem that is happening. Number six, we wrote to our hosting platform, this security breach has happened. So we were attacking it at multiple levels. And I think this is the resilience of a company, or this is the resilience that you develop, the superpowers that you develop. Within 5 days, the website was taken down. We got an acknowledgement from both them, and the money was returned to the customers from whom it was fraudulently taken. We still don't know who the founders or the promoters are, but it was handled. It was done. And we live to tell another tale. Yes.
Good one, because many of the businesses are online, right? I mean, all of the businesses have some sort of a online presence, and without that, it's you can't really exist. So, it was
Absolutely.
important to hear your end of the story.
And I think the biggest worry for us is the IPR, the reputational risk, because you can't be seen as because the customers will not say who were the promoters of KhojCraft. They will say, I bought it from KhojCraft, and now KhojCraft is not delivering the order, right? So it's a huge reputational risk. And I think kudos to everybody who sort of in the ecosystem came together to tackle the whole thing. And I think we have a playbook on how to tackle it.
Yeah, so they can get in touch if...
Yeah, absolutely. Correct. Yeah.
Leena, there's one interesting thing that all the three of you are co-founders. Just very quickly tell me about how does it work for you, and how do you make this work for business, your partnership with your co-founder?
Okay, so I think for me, the real spine of the entire business is just the partnership that me and Mala share. Mala is 15 years older than me, and therefore so much wisdom comes on the table. And I came from a family background which is always against getting into a partnership because they've not had pleasant experiences. But when I got into this partnership with Bala in 2000, and that's 25 years ago, we set up our code of honor saying that whatever happens, like we also are good friends, right? So there's just so much more coming on the table because of that. And I think over a period of time, we kind of put our code of honor together and we just follow it to the T till date. It's 25 years and counting. And I think that has been my saving grace. And a couple of things in the code of honor is if you've had an argument, you can't go back to bed without sorting it out. Whatever, no matter how big, small, I don't care, but nobody goes to bed without doing that. Second is keeping our egos out of the business. There are lots of ideas that come from both of us. And finally, what gets implemented or what gets thrashed is always our idea. It is not my idea got trashed and your idea got picked up and that's the idea that's doing well. There is no me in the business, there's only a we. And we jointly take responsibility for all the success that we see, and over jointly take responsibility for all the ups and downs that the business goes through. So that's, right. I think, yeah. And there's so many other, I'd actually posted when we completed 20 years of our business, I put up a post on LinkedIn saying that why am I such a big fan of partnership? And yeah. I'm kind of just trying to recall from that. The other thing is both of us are very different as people, right? And I think it's very important if you're looking at a partnership, please don't pick up somebody who's exactly like you. You need to bring somebody on board. So between Mala and I, Mala is the more extrovert, I'm the more introvert. And selectively we change our roles. but she's a people player in the business, and I'm the person sitting very happily behind a screen and doing my job. And it works beautifully well because both of us have got our own orbits in the business. And one does not mess with the other person's orbit, right? And I think it makes your life a lot simpler, actually. I literally have to tell myself it's a production issue, not my monkey, not my circus. And I say this with love and respect. Doesn't mean that I won't jump in to save the day, but what it means is I will give her all my ideas from where I watch what's going on. I will even step in and dirty my hands and legs, try to solve an issue. But at the end, it is Mala's call. She's got the veto. And even if that veto is taking me down the wrong lane, and I can see it, Bala, 1 year later, you're going to have pain in that problem, in that area, I will still go on that ride simply because I think you owe this to each other at a human level. Nobody knows it all. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. You could sit on endless sheets of data and nothing is going to tell you what's going to show up on your table tomorrow morning. So I think those are a couple of things that have really kept us going. And I'm a huge, huge, huge fan of partnership.
Oh my God, can I just say, Leena,
Yeah.
that is literally like, just any relationship, right? Like if you can just truly add those things into, in those principles into any relationship, whether it's, husband, mom, dad, whatever, it's going to take you so much further, isn't it? I love it.
Yeah. And I think I actually live my life that way with friendships, with relationships, where I am. Even with my team and my employees, it's the same. Love, trust, and respect. If one of these also are gone, then either you fix it or you exit it. But you can't sit in that place and create toxicity for them and for you. One of you at least has a chance to go out and create a better life.
I've seen Leena and Mala's partnership. I worked with them closely, so I really admire their partnership, which is why the question even.
Yeah, it doesn't mean we don't fight. Let people not get this wrong. We fight like Tom and Jerry, and usually I'm the miscreant in the business. But I think we find our center back in no time. And
yeah,
I think it's very essential that you voice your differences.
Yes.
And to be okay with, like, there are 100 things that I disagree with my partnership, with my partner, and she disagrees with me. And you've got to learn to live with it.
Yeah.
There's one leadership principle that actually, is a big takeaway for me from having worked at Amazon. That's disagree and commit.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's just so true.
Yeah.
I mean, it's in any relationship, right? It's okay to voice your differences, but to be able to commit in the end once a decision is made, I think is.
Yeah. Because, even if I know it's the wrong thing for the business because I feel a certain way, but if we've decided that this is what we are pursuing, then zip up the ego and get into work and get it done. We'll see what happens later, but when you've committed, then you go all out. You play all out.
Yeah. Given the same circumstances, how does it work for you, Yeshoda, given that you have partnership with your sister within the same family?
And I think something that lots to learn from Leena, and I think some of the things that we also kind of built as a foundation where we first sat down and spoke to each other, right? We were like, how is our working relationship going to be? What are either of us okay with? I think it helped that we had 20 years of incessant fighting to kind of rely on. Growing up together, I think you definitely know all the buttons you should not be pressing in your sibling, and yet you press them. So it helped to have that conversation and be like, look, this is what I'm okay with, this is what I'm not, and so on. But more importantly, because we saw our parents work together, we saw them build something together, we came from that atmosphere. It gave us that opportunity to learn from them, right? What are the things that we admired? What are the things that they did and worked for them but may not work for us? And most importantly, like, first we're family and then we're co-founders. I think it's sometimes very easy to forget that. And yeah, of course, our businesses are very important to us, and it feels like your child, you're this and you're that and all of that. But end of the day, she is my sister, and then the business comes next. And that's like hard to say even in an investor meeting, but we say it to remind ourselves first that that always holds true. Because if we are not able to trust each other first as sisters and have that relationship, that is going to reflect in the business. And in the business, we're equals, right? This was especially something that was important for me to recognize, because I'm an older sibling. And as an older sibling, at home, if I see my sister doing something, I can say, don't do that. I disagree with you. And I don't need to justify myself as much, because there's a bit of that experience, an older sibling and bossiness that comes with it. But as a co-founder, we are equals. She's not my younger sister telling me what to do. She's my equal co-founder who has expertise in her field, which I don't have. And she's telling me what we need to do. So I think being respectful of those boundaries and that relationship was something that we spoke about. And I think, I mean, there might be a lot of things that we both disagree on or fall short on, but I think we've been very mindful of respecting each other's boundaries and respecting our professional relationship and personal relationship separately. So I think that's something that has always helped a lot. And we have different roles to play in the company, right? And as Leena said, you don't want someone that's exactly like you, because then you're going to be stepping on each other's toes all the time. And what value are you adding if you're doing the same things? So it really helps that our personalities are very different, which means we disagree on 90% of the things. But it pushes, I think, both of us to like get out of our comfort zones, start thinking about problems in ways that we probably wouldn't think about ourselves. And then it also gives you someone to rely on at the end of the day. Like that's the most important thing, I think, with a co-founder. And I'm lucky that it's my sister, that because when you are finding, like when you're founding a business, you're like, the idea behind being an entrepreneur, we all say, is because I want freedom. I don't want to report to anybody. And yeah, that's just, we all know that's just a policy, because you're constantly, you're a slave to yourself, you're a slave to your business, your investors, your employees, your customers, everybody. And more importantly, you're always selling to everybody. You're not just selling to your customer. Your first few employees, you're selling this dream of a company that will succeed one day. To your investors, you're selling this idea and this vision that you have. To your customers, you're selling. To your vendors, you're selling this idea of being somebody that will actually last. And at some point, right, you're like, oh my God, I can't be selling an idea to myself. I need a reality check. And your co-founder is that reality check, right? Where you're able to just be your authentic self and recognize like what y'all are doing, where you're just able to check each other. And if you have a co-founder, it's a great opportunity to be able to do that with them, because they know exactly what's going on in the business just as much as you. But if you don't have a co-founder, having somebody outside or within the company that you have who is your reality check always, I think is very important.
Yeah. You know, while you both have that co-founder to sort of rely on, Mansi has a co-founder, but almost, you know, her father's a co-founder, but he takes on the design aspect or works on the design aspect, where Mansi overlooks the entire business. Mansi, how does that work? And do you have any other community that you rely on?
I think, yeah, I think the dynamics within a sibling or a friendship are very different from a father-daughter or a father-child relationship, because it's anyway sort of loaded with a lot of cultural context and how we've all been grown up, right? Whereas the parent always has to get that degree of respect, and you cannot be as candid as you would to a contemporary of yours or with someone whom you have a different kind of a relationship or a more professional relationship. Also, he is from a different generation, as is all our parents, and therefore they don't understand professionalism the way we do in a more corporate sense of the word, right? They're not digital first natives. Their first point of thing is my staff taken care of? How are we handling all our employees? Salaries have to be paid, etc. What is scaling up? We're at a certain level. Why do we need to go higher, etc.? So there are a lot of challenges, and we started out as a digital first business, as an e-commerce business, right? So for him to sort of even understand what it entailed and how the whole dynamics and the operational aspect of it was quite challenging. But that's the resilience, I think, of founders, that they learn it. And it's commendable that a 70-year-old man has been able to take it on and run with it greatly. He is the creative mastermind behind all our designs, and some of them are really gorgeous pieces. I think what he brings to the table, which I don't, is an absolutely bold and a very strong creative vision. He will put money behind pieces which he thinks are important. He doesn't care whether the world wants to buy them or not. He will just say, this is gorgeous and we have to support this art. We have to buy this piece. It needs to be shown and it needs to be showcased. And you can argue, but I've learned over a period of time that vision and that passion, my job is to market that passion. My job is to sort of take that and run with it. And I think it's worked beautifully. And I think in that process, I have developed a much greater sense of respect for his talent, for his vision, which, in a father-daughter relationship, you would not. But now I can see what he brings to the table. And he's definitely much more of a risk taker, much more bolder in his appetite for risk. And it's something which I think I've learned tremendously from, and I hope I carry over. Because risk-taking is really the lifeblood for an entrepreneur. And to learn that and to be able to go with it and put the money behind it and saying that I'm placing my bets on these horses is really something great.
Yeah. Do you use AI in your businesses? I want to ask all three. So can Mansi start?
We use it quite extensively. As I said, we are a digital first business. So we use it a lot, and we use a lot of furniture, a lot of which it's difficult for people to conceive how it will look in their houses. It's very difficult for them to imagine what the proportions and the physicality of that product is. Also, we're not always able to go and shoot in fancy locations. We have to shoot wherever we are, and some big pieces difficult to travel. So at least definitely hugely in terms of creating a visual appeal, AI has been remarkable in sharing with customers and creating renders for them to be able to visualize the products in their space. AI has been tremendously helpful. Storytelling is a very large part of any design business, as you well know, Deepa. So we use a lot of AI to also create evocative pieces of communication, catalogs, which work to interior designers and to customers. We use it multiple levels across our businesses.
I've seen it and they're quite lovely, Mansi. Same to you, Leena. How have you explored using AI in your business?
Yes, I think AI is definitely, if we have not already embraced it, then we are kind of getting left behind. There is a lot of hype and the bubble has burst. So what's really remaining of AI in terms of how you create a leverage of that for your business is what remains to be seen for entrepreneurs. I think for the Giving Tree, what we're doing fundamentally is using a lot of AI to read our documents, to read certain numbers. It's almost like an assistant. Whether it's to pull up my content creation calendar, pull up anything that is redundant, anything that needs a creative or a research-based input, then I use a lot of AI to bring that part on the table. So you don't always start with a blank sheet anymore. You've got a lot of data-backed research that's waiting for you to kind of sieve through. Makes your decision-making a lot more sharper. And I think that's how we are actually using AI at the Giving Tree, is to create that leverage. And I think at the end of the day, an entrepreneur's biggest currency is time. And if you're able to figure out a way to pass on all the boring, redundant, research-based, any job that the AI can do in your place, then please put it out there, because then you can use your creative bandwidth to do so much more. Yeah, so that's where we are
Yeshoda,
at.
do you want to? Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Leena. What about Yeshoda? How do you integrate AI into your business?
Mhm. I mean, we are very tech enabled in terms of optimizing the supply chain and getting the flowers in time to the customers and so on. So that has all, we have like an internal dashboard that Ria has developed, and that allows us to track our orders and everything. AI has helped us optimize that to a large extent and also get a lot of good insights through it, right? In terms of what's working well, what's not. And yeah, I think AI today is really helping us make things a lot more efficient. And I would say, along with being an assistant, also kind of like a really smart intern that you have. I remember once reading some article and it described AI as you have this really smart manager. And back then, now at least it remembers, but it that has to, constantly be reminded of what you're looking for. But when you ask for that, they're able to kind of pull out all the data and they become like a sounding board, right? So that really helps. And especially when you're working through any sort of problem, or you want to understand where your blind spots are. So when you're able to kind of put that in and then say, okay, what am I missing? Or this is a strategy document that we worked on. This is our sales for the last 5 years. What are the insights that you think I should be tracking and stuff like that? I think it just pushes you to get out of that, your own mind space, and see what you're missing. So I think that way it's helpful. And of course, a lot of like data mining and research and analysis. I think we encourage everybody in our team to use some sort of AI in their jobs, because we're like, if there's something that AI can be doing, you should not be doing it at all, right? Automate it, move on. It's a good thing. Like sometimes, we have these interview questionnaires that we do before someone joins. And sometimes my team member will be like, oh, they definitely used AI in these answers. I'm like, that's fine, that's good. But did they use it well, or did they just copy paste some random answers? That's what is important in understanding.
Yeah. So in this day and age, knowing AI and how to use it efficiently is like very key, right? Rashmi, you had a couple of questions that you wanted to ask them.
Yeah, no, that's actually so true. One of the things that being an entrepreneur myself, one of the things that I've actually struggled with is just having a digital presence, right? Personal brand. And especially for someone who just maybe posted randomly on Facebook or any platform for that matter, including Instagram, having to show up and have content and, be able to promote not just yourself, but also your company and, being able to do that. I know there was a big battle for me personally. I just am curious to hear what you guys have gone through. And, I'm sure there's many women, maybe Yeshoda, it's a different perspective for you, right? Because I feel like, that generation is just easier. You grew up with it versus for us is a little bit more far-fetched. We had to really get uncomfortable with, the whole concept. So I'd love to sort of hear your guys's, thoughts on, on that. Leena, do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. So, yeah, I think Rashmi, I completely resonate with that question because that has been a question that has uh, been on my mind for a while. And between Mala and me, I'm the more tech savvy one, more digital first. We had a website 20 years back when people were still thinking, oh, who has a website? I'm like, no, that's my digital address, and I think just staying in that space has helped. And when it comes to creating social media, etc., I think fundamental is first is I would always say is build your brand first, because though we are a partnership, we are known everywhere as Mala and Leena. We've been an active part of BNI for a long time, which is a networking organization. It changed my life 360 degrees. Like, I'm so grateful for the experience I had there. And there, it was not the giving tree that was known. What was known was Mala and Leena. So, and I was one of the trainers in that organization, and we would teach this to the new entrepreneurs who would sign into the communities, saying that people buy from people. Yeah, they don't buy from a brand, they don't buy from an organization. So that kind of stuck with me. And I would very often use this example and say, people buy from people. So if you like Leena, then it does not matter whether Leena sells tomatoes or transformers, you will still buy it if that's what you're looking for. Right? So I think first is to build your own brand. very important. And from personal brand, then you put pieces of your, your organization somewhere in the background. But I think you've got to be the face of it, the way I look at it.
No, I think, that's so true. Mansi, do you have a, perspective on that?
Oh, I think it's a
can't
very
hear
good. I
you.
think it's a very, very good
Oh.
question. I'll tell you very quickly. I think women, and myself included, are very hesitant to own our success and to put ourselves out there and showcase our achievements, right? It's a very well documented fact. Men will go up right out there, ask for their raises. If they've done 10%, they will show 50% and they will make it sound like the company is enormous. Women will do 180% and always play it down and say, oh, I'm just building it. It's a small company. It's only got 50 employees. It's only got 100 employees. Always downplaying it. So women really need to get out there and own their success. I am unfortunately one of the majority who never owns a success. I'm very hesitant to talk about it. Till 2 years back, I still called myself a housewife. I would not talk about my career, my professional career, or my entrepreneurial journey. I would just say I do a little bit of work from home. So absolutely 100% guilty as charged. A year back, and this is part of my planting seeds thing, which I did, that I said, I'm going to get onto LinkedIn and I'm going to post every week about, if not me personally, about my company and what I'm doing with the company. And that's paid off magnificently because I've generated so many connections, so many contacts, so many leads have come in from that. So we must own it. We must talk about it. We really need to do it much, much more on a bigger scale. So Rashmi, bang on question.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Yeshoda, I can't wait to hear, how you've navigated that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, well, it's funny because I actually just deactivated my Instagram a couple of months ago. So while we're talking about being digital native.
Wait, how? Why?
Yeah, I keep going through my phases, but not in the first few years of Hoovu, of course. And it was something for me and Ria to figure out as well in terms of balancing how important that personal brand was versus Hoovu and how much should we be showcasing about ourselves and so on. But finally, I think it just comes down to whatever feels authentic to you. Like, you definitely have to push yourself out of your comfort zone. Of course, my comfort zone is not posting anywhere and not doing anything, but obviously that's not an option. But what feels real? And I think it took a lot of experimentation of the first few years as well. And then we kind of found that balance. Like, yeah, like for Rakhi, I remember Ria and I did a reel together a couple of years ago, and that really went viral. And all kinds, a lot of people that I didn't even know had seen it were like posting it, because for them it was something fresh. It was two sisters posting about Rakhi, and we are sisters, we are co-founders, and we are building a puja brand. So it kind of just fell together really well. But that was just something that was so simple. And yeah, my comfort zone would be, I would not have wanted to shoot that reel, but my marketing team would not let me get off of it. But at the same time, that was authentic. That was my relationship with Ria versus like kind of just posturing about something, or whatever it is. Like, even if it's about posting on LinkedIn, I think it's about posting on LinkedIn about the things that like matter to me, or are things that I genuinely want to showcase about an event that I did or about the company. When it became about just having a founder brand, then I feel like people can see through that really quickly, and you don't enjoy it. I don't think anyone else enjoys it. There's way too much non-quality content that we all already see on LinkedIn. So just being a little aware of that. Like for me, what I enjoyed posting about on my personal Instagram was the farm visits that we did when we met our different farmers, talking to them about it, or when I was in my different warehouses and what my team was doing related to that. That felt natural. And because it felt natural to me, I think people were able to connect with it. And yeah, for someone else, it might be something else. Some people are, some of my friends, I have a friend called Karishma who runs this beautiful brand called Faye Beauty, and she's doing a series of building in public, and she talks about her entrepreneurial journey, and her videos are phenomenal. And she really comes out in that, right? Like, you can really see that star in her. And maybe if I were to replicate that, I would not have been able to do it the same way because it's not natural to me. So I would say just think, your brand is very important, your founder brand, along with the company brand, because in the first few years, nobody knows your company. They know you. And as Leena said, they are buying from you and that credibility. In the beginning, I would, like, even when we would take our initial calls, I'd be like, yes, I'm calling from customer service or logistics. Because I was like, if people know I'm the founder doing these calls, they'll be like, what is this company? It's a company of like 5 people. How are they going to get me my stuff? But soon we realized that customers appreciated that authenticity. And then when we were like, yeah, sorry, we are a small team, we messed up, we'll correct this. I mean, of course, you can't make the same mistake twice then, but then once you had that leeway, right, which a brand or a big company, none of us would even give that leeway to. So it's okay to kind of, I mean, it's important to showcase that side and show that you're also growing through this and bringing your brand out. But just being mindful that at some point it should not become about that founder brand and not about the company. Because I think it's very easy to do that. There are so many events that come up where you can speak at. There are so many things that you can keep yourself busy with where you're building your founder brand that you forget that you have to build a company. And post Shark Tank, that's what happened. Like we had so many opportunities. Ria and I literally had to silence everything and be like, both of us are never attending an event together. And we're only going to do it if we see value in it. Just because someone invited us, we're not going to go there. Because at the end of the day, I have to run my business. That's the most important. And if I do that, that's going to speak more than anything else. Just about
oh my God, well said, well said. And I would not have expected that you would have, like turned off your Instagram account, but, I think we have something to learn. That's great. Well, listen, I mean, this has been so insightful, personally for me, having, just hearing each one of your sort of stories and, what you guys have gone through. I think so powerful. And really, I mean, I do want to open it up for questions. If, anyone in the audience has, anything to, that you're curious about, their journeys or, want to ask about anything. But I do have like a few things that I want to tackle as well. So I'll give, while people are going to post, hopefully they're able to add, the questions
6:15
here.
is your class. Check with Gaurav sir. 6:15 is your class.
And
sorry, Mansi, we can hear you. Yeah.
so this is actually so true, right? Like we're hustling. This is so true that, we have multiple things that we're doing. And, like Mansi's
Mansi is
so
playing the mother.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my God. See, that's why we keep it real here, right? This is what we're navigating on a day-to-day basis. I really appreciate you guys coming here and sort of sharing that. But I have a couple of things that I wanted to ask, especially when you're going through this journey, and I am sure we've all gone through it, or maybe you've gone through it individually, like especially self-doubt. How do you handle self-doubt when it creeps in, especially being a woman leader? I mean, I'll open it up to anyone who wants to add to, to this, because I think as founders, we kind of go through that, self-doubt. So if you want to add anything, Mansi, Leena, or Yeshoda, how do you manage and, navigate that?
Okay. So for me, self-doubt is something that whatever's running between your two ears all the time is a conversation that is the background music to everything you do in your day, and self-doubt is going to be a part of it. So I read a book recommended by one of my coaches a few years ago. It was a book that he'd written, and I think it's called The Little Voice in Your Head. And he gave us about 70 or 80 techniques to deal with different kinds of languaging that comes from between both our ears. And when he spoke about self-doubt, he said, it is going to be there all the time. You've got to learn to live with it, befriend it, and say, okay, I hear you. Thanks for sharing. And still do what you want to do. Because trying to push it away is actually, you're going against something, right? So it's an inherent part of my personality. So while I'm working on creating new ways of thinking, over a period of time, that self-doubt will go away. But till then, if I'm going to use all my energy to shush it away, I'm losing my energy. So I'd rather use my energy in building that part of me, which is going to have a direction much further away from where self-doubt is standing. But it's going to still be there. With every new thing I do, the self-doubt will come back right here. And I'm going to say, thanks for sharing. We will still do it. Yeah.
I love it. You just move on. You recognize and move on. I like that. Mansi or Yeshoda?
Yeshoda, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, I think having a co-founder there helps to be able to kind of voice your thoughts. And sometimes you just need to say it out loud and realize that, okay, yeah, my mind was being dramatic. Once I say it in a sentence, it's gone. I remember once I heard some celebrity say this, and it stuck with me. And she called it the so what like philosophy. And it's like every time you feel like something's going wrong, just ask yourself, so what? And like, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm like, oh my God, this is not going to work. Okay, so what? And then immediately your mind's like, your business is going to collapse and you're going to be a joke. Then you're like, okay, that's a bit dramatic. I think we can all calm down. And then you're like, okay, yeah, if it doesn't work out, this is the actual reality, not whatever games our mind is playing with us. And I think that exercise has always helped me.
These learnings that y'all are sharing could be applied as well to life, not just running a business. A lot of things that you guys are saying can so well apply to how you look at life. Mansi, you want to go?
Yeah, I completely agree, Deepa. I think self-doubt is a habitual companion for many of us. We sort of walk along, and many of us also pack guilt along with self-doubt into the journey. So we're carrying a lot of baggage. I really don't know how I tackle self-doubt, but I think you sort of have to keep walking. One of the things which I personally, and where I get extremely sort of anxious and the self-doubt becomes like too overpowering, I like to go into a state of what I call a state of flow, which is I deeply invest myself for an hour in something which gives me, which I have to put my full energy into, right? I love working on creative pieces of communication. So sometimes I'll just clear my decks and say all the rush and the urgency can wait. This is what I need to clear my mind. So I will double down and create a piece of communication which resonates with me, and which talks to a piece of art that I feel strongly about. Or I will, if I'm at home, I will bake something and I feel that sense of concentration on a task, which is a very mechanical task, really helps me to release that self-doubt, and I'm able to look at it and reframe it in a fresher frame of mind. I don't know, it's a hack, but it works well for me. So that dhyan is a form of meditation, that sense of deep flow. I love just that sense of deep work which you can get from putting your mind to something. I love it.
Yeah, I love that, sort of you're almost, pivoting, to a different thought process, right? Versus,
Yes.
Dwelling on that. I like that. Definitely a good strategy. It's great. I think, you guys have, been amazing with, sharing, the stories. And for me, I think between what Leena shared, in terms of a why, and getting a mentor, and building sort of that community is just something that's going to stick for sure. In fact, I wanted to ask you, Leena, I know you talked about the community that you're a part of. Can you share with us a little bit more about what role that played, and how you were able to take away some of the learnings?
So I was part of the Business Network International, BNI, for almost 11 years. And so what that did to me was it helped me learn how to speak about my business in a way that people understand. Otherwise, I realized up until then, we were just entrepreneurs talking about all the amazing things that we are doing with our product. We were living in our own head, as opposed to coming out there and seeing what it is that the customer is really looking for, and can I match my product to his need, right? And BNI has a beautiful structure, like, oh my God. And I'm a big fan of anything that is process and structure based. I'm a big fan of. And so BNI was like that, literally that elixir that I got when I went looking for process and systems. And there's a way, like, can you imagine talking about your business in just 30 seconds? And we were taught how to do that, and we did it so effectively. And then after a few years, I went on to the teaching side of it. I became a trainer with BNI, and I would do their 5-hour orientation training. So learning, being in that system and playing full out in that safe space, like, I am not the same person anymore. That is all I can say. A lot of the credit I give to the way I present myself, the clarity with which I think about my business has come from BNI, because of the systems and the processes that are built into that idea of how business needs to be run. BNI at its purest form is still one of the best things I've ever experienced. Of course, now, when it goes into the hands of so many other people, things get diluted, drama sets in. So when the drama became too much is when we stepped out. But at its purest form, it's a brilliant community to be part of. And there's so much to learn.
No, that's great. Awesome. Thanks for, sharing that. I know we're going to come, to a close here and wrap up, with 10 minutes to go. I don't believe there are, any specific questions that have come, because you guys have literally covered it all from, all aspects of it. Especially for what Mansi shared with, like the joy of starting. I think that totally resonates, as women founders, to own that why you started, and, let that sort of carry forward. And, I'll never remember, I mean, I'll never forget the messy middle. That term is going to
That's really, yes, it's so true. And we're all, I think, in the middle of that messy middle and managing multiple. Yes, completely. What about you, Rashmi? Why don't you tell us a little bit quickly about your founder journey and how Deepa and you came together? That's interesting for us to hear too.
Oh my God, I'll tell you, there are a few things as I'm sitting here and listening to you guys. I'm like, that's Deepa and me right there, in what you guys talked about, in terms of partnership. Oh my God, I think we just had a conversation earlier today, and we were like, maybe we need to pivot into how we're doing things, and just going through that journey. So we are literally living it as we're going through this process. And I think for the both of us, I think we complement, one another just beautifully. And this was literally sort of God sent in how it all happened. And, truly complement one another. Sometimes I tend to, like run 100 miles an hour. And Deepa is my anchor. She's a good reality check, saying that, okay, stop, think, and then move forward. So I truly value that, Deepa. I'm going to let you, add if there's anything else that you want to share.
No, it's almost like a jigsaw puzzle, right? The things that I'm not good at, Rashmi is excellent in it. And the things Rashmi misses out, I compliment for it. Like Rashmi totally looks after the technical aspects and all of that. And I focus more on getting the content or what our next topic should be and who the speakers are and those kind of things. We just like so beautifully sort of complement each other and support each other. And even the pivotal part, right? We were just talking today about what's working, what's not working, and how to take our, what we're doing further. So yes, it's been a wonderful journey so far, and we look forward to making an impact in a good way. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, it's really, I think, the purpose that makes the difference. It's really, reminding ourselves, of the why, reminding why we started this, and, really owning that. Just like, you guys shared sort of your why. I think, for us, that was important as well. And we remind ourselves, what Yeshoda mentioned, was really, really something that was telling, where she said, it doesn't matter, even if it's in an investor, meeting, to remind ourselves that we're still sisters, we're still family, I think goes first. And that's so true as I was thinking about it, because Deepa and me were childhood friends. Even though we weren't that close, we were, we were very good friends. I've known her now for like, oh my God, like, majority of my life. Given that, that comes first, right? There are so many ups and downs that business, I mean, this is not a business, we're building a community, but this is still work, and we're enjoying the journey for us. So, Mansi, thank you for asking. It's really, it's really been great. Actually, that brings us to what I wanted to share next. We're actually hosting an in-person event, October 5th in Bangalore. It's actually our second in-person event as part of SIRA Connect. So for those of who are interested, kind of want to take this virtual presence to more in-person, I would definitely encourage you to to attend. I'm actually going to see if I can share my screen really quick so I can bring up the poster. I hope you guys are able to see it.
Nice.
But yeah, it's great. This is going to be at Just Be, and Nidhi has been amazing, in hosting this session. She's actually going to be starting with a sound healing, and then we're going to enjoy a meal together, and obviously sort of share and really be able to build that intimate connection with other women. And really, I think it goes to what sort of translated in this conversation, right? It's owning your why, but it's also building a community and building your sort of support system. It's so important, and we've realized that as we sort of age with grace, I think having that like-minded community is very, very essential. So if you're interested, please, I have my number over there. Please reach out. We'd love to have you join us. And the other thing that sort of stood out for me in this conversation was evolution. Each one of you kind of touched on that, to own that. It's not just the destination; it's actually the journey. Pivot, evolve, and own that. I think is something that has been very, very telling. So yeah. With that, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and bring it back here so I can see all of you. But yeah, that's it. Wait, I believe there's a question here. It says, really appreciate everyone sharing your entrepreneurial experiences. Have a few questions. Can you share how you coped with your monthly cycles, your mood swings, family life balances, stress, bringing up kids, in your journey? Oh my God, that's, who wants to, take that? Because I feel like each one has different golden nuggets to add to this.
Yeah, I think honestly, this is a question for another round of SIRA Talks. Right? And I think this was something that was running in the back of my mind. Thank you to the person from the audience who's asked this question. I think fundamentally, as women entrepreneurs, or just being women, the biggest thing that we miss out is on the fact that we are asked or expected to cope and perform at the level of the other gender, the male gender. And that puts us under so much of pressure that it leads to a burnout in no time, right? And this constant thing of having to prove. And I think Mansi somewhere said that in her conversation that, for men, the level playing field is a lot, I mean, they have a better playing field on so many fronts. They are not as compartmentalized as we need to be, etc. But what I think is if we can respect our cycles, our mood swings, our hormonal roller coasters, and be fair to our bodies and our emotions at the time that they need us, and then figure out a way to work in the other time may mean that we'll slow down in the race in the short run. But I think in the long run, we'll be happier, more fulfilled, more healthy, wiser. So please enjoy your cup of tea when you can. And yeah, that would be my way of looking at it on how you cope. This is how I cope. When the whole world is going mad and deliveries are out, I will just shut everything and I'll sit and make my cup of coffee and have it for 10 minutes. And I'm not going to be disturbed. So somewhere we'll have to figure out a way, and please ask for help. I don't know why, as women, we find it so difficult to ask for help, professional or otherwise.
Yeah.
We don't have to be Superman and do everything all by ourselves. It's nice to ask for help. You show people you trust them. Not
I
when you
think
say you
that's
help them, but when you ask for help, I think is when you actually earn somebody's trust. So if you could do more, I mean, that's what I have learned to do over the last few years, and it's been super helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's really true to so many of us, right? Like, especially as we get older and the mood swings and everything else, that, you know, when you're younger, you're like, what? I don't know what you're talking about. You know,
Now
that
also
you
we
end
don't know
up
what we're
doing.
talking about, but it's just from the mood swings perspective. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. Mansi, anything, you know, you would like to add? I know we're, you know, like coming up on time, but
Yeah, I'm cognizant of the time, so I'm not going to take it. But just to go back to a conversation Deepa, Rashmi, and I had, I had an important, somebody dropped in and wanted to bring a very senior interior designer to the store. And of course, 5:36, not an unreasonable time to ask, but you're grappling with some other stuff. So you're wondering how to frame it correctly. Various things have to be taken into cognizance, etc. And you wonder, for men, it's just that much easier because they just have to say, hey, listen, I'm going to be home late. So just manage. Or men just don't have to think about even calling up, right? Women have to put various other dominoes into place so that not everything collapses. You can go out for a drink with the client. You can do a long, detailed discussion, not having to compartmentalize, but be fully present in that moment. Not easy challenges, and many of us face them on a regular basis. But I think that's where systems come into play. That's where health comes into play. And the more you are able to create systems and processes are not just needed for the workplace, they're more importantly needed for your personal life, so that you're able to give, if not 100%, at least 80% to your work, because your company deserves it, your hard work deserves it, your employees deserve it, all the various stakeholders deserve it, right? So the systems, to my mind, and I started my business when I was in my 40s. Therefore, the hustle didn't come easy. There were already multiple challenging things at hand. It came at the time of COVID, which we all know was a very difficult time in any case. But I think at that point of time, it's where I realized that the systems and processes at home are far more important, need to be built first before the systems and processes at work. But I'm going to be very cognizant of the time, handing it over back to you, Deepa and Rashmi.
oh my God, no, it was amazing. I mean, look at that. In spite of, I think that's why it's so powerful, right? Like, in spite of that, you guys are here and shared your stories and shared sort of, you know, all these insights for others, and you know, prevailed, you know, in spite of navigating all of that, you know. So we want to wish you guys much success, and you know, with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for joining. This was, you know, definitely great. You know, we do have another session coming up, but we'll, you know, keep you all posted. But you know, if you're interested in the online event, I mean, the in-person event, then we'll see you on October 5th.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everyone.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks, Deepa. Thanks, Rashmi. Bye, Leena, Yeshoda.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
guys. Bye. Thank you.
Lovely. Thanks.